Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're making a Berliner Weisse. We're doing a quick sour on it and we are not chilling. This is going to be a 2-day process, and if you want to see the full recipe and how we came up with it, look above me. So I've got my just like tap water run through a pure filter here. I put a Camden tablet in there to get rid of the chloramines that might be left over. I'm gonna toss it in and add 3 milliliters of lactic acid to get our water pH down. This helps the efficiency of your mash, and we're putting so little malt in this that I think it's gonna need some help to drop the pH. Usually the malt will drop the pH itself down to, like, you want it between 5.2 and 5.7, and if you have more malt, obviously you drop down further, but we only have like 7 pounds going in, so it's not enough. I'm gonna just fill this kettle with 6.5 gallons today, not 7, just because, again, not as much grain to absorb. One of you guys actually reminded me the trick of the old throw a siphon in to keep it from glugging. This actually works really great. And there's 6.5. So I'm doing my Clawhammer system today. This is great for kettle sours because you can keep a consistent temperature. So I'm just gonna set it up, put some insulation on it, get it all going so that we can actually start heating the water. All right, it's all together now. Get my pump primed, and I'm just gonna add my lactic acid now. And 3 milliliters. Okie dokie. So I can turn my heat and my pump on now. So I just turned my pump on to circulate the water, so it gets more, like, the temp probe is at the bottom next to the heating coil, so if it keeps circulating, you get a better reading. But I'm gonna turn my heat down to 157 as per the usual. And I will see you guys back here when I mill the grain. All right, we are ready to do all the grain. All right, so we're doing 3 pounds of white wheat. This is Great Western white wheat. Super light in color, that's why it's called white. We're also gonna use 4 pounds of Pilsner malt. All right, so that's it for fermentables except for the apricots that we're gonna add super late in the game. So I'm just gonna go ahead and mill this. We can mash it in about 20 degrees. All right, so I'm going for almost flour consistency. Looks like that'll get us there. And I always test my mill with a little bit before we start. And it works. This is the lightest grain bill I've ever used. It's kind of tripping me out. I just had to check the recipe to make sure it would work. I've never had this bin as empty as this. This is about the consistency. All right, so this is about 157 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm gonna knock it down to 152 for our mash temp. And we're gonna mash in. Making sure there's no clumps. This is a very liquidy mash. I hope we get the amount of enzyme activity we need for this to work. and give us a high efficiency. Typically, you would want your water to grain ratio to be a little less watery. I think it'll be fine though. I'm an optimist. All right, so I'm gonna take a little sample. Just to get the pH, I'm gonna stick it in my kegerator here to cool down completely. And hopefully we're between 5.2 and 5.7 pH. And I'm just gonna reattach my line and restart my pump. So I'm just gonna set a timer for an hour for my mash, and we'll just check in later for my pH. Okay, so our pH. So we're holding at 5.6, so that's good. That'll get us down. So once this mash is done, we have to drop it down to 4.5 pH, and then we'll pitch our lactic culture, the Berliner Weisse blend by White Labs. That's been sitting out and getting all room temp for me. And then we'll just keep it all insulated, keep the temperature at a consistent 120 and let it sit overnight until the pH is around 3.6, 3.7. Okay, so it has been an hour. I'm going to pull my grain, throw it in my awesome Yakima Valley bucket, and take a pre-boil gravity reading. 7 pounds of grain is so much lighter than 12. Okay, so we have 6 gallons in here. So our boil volume was supposed to be 6.1 gallons. We're a little below that, unfortunately, but let's see if our gravity made up for it. So now I've got to take a pH reading. I'm also going to turn this up because we need to boil it for 10 minutes. So basically what I'm gonna do is keep taking pH readings until we hit 4.5. And I'm not super concerned about it being warm. So this is 5.4 now. I'm just gonna add a milliliter at a time until we hit it. I'm also not really concerned about there being less than 5 gallons when we finish everything, like in the fermenter, because we're adding 4 pounds of nectarine, so that's going to give us a lot of volume. So pH is now at 5.1, adding another milliliter. 5.0, another milliliter. pH is not linear. If you add 3 milliliters, each milliliter will give you a different drop in pH, unfortunately. So it's kind of like a feeling thing. All right, so we're at 4.9 now. I'm just gonna let it sit at that because I don't know actually what it is. And we'll get this up to a boil, and once it cools down, we add this guy, we can do it right before then. So our pre-boil gravity is 8.5. I'm going to throw that in the calculator to see what it is. The gravity we're at right now is 1.035. Our pre-boil is supposed to be 1.03. And our original gravity is also supposed to be 1.03. We're going to add a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to adjust this. Our gravity is going to go haywire once we add the nectarines anyway. We're not going to have a really good idea of what the ABV is. We're just going to know it's 4% or less, basically. And I'm going to be good with that. Okay, so this is about at 120 degrees, so I'm just gonna go ahead and take my pH reading. So we're at about a 5, so I'm gonna go ahead and add some more lactic acid. I'm gonna go ahead and add 2 milliliters. And we're at 4.7. All right, 2 more. And we are at 4.5. Okay, so now I'm going to just inoculate this with my White Labs Berliner Weisse. I'm gonna keep this heat at 120 degrees just overnight. And hopefully by the time I wake up tomorrow, it's ready to go so we can start the boil. One thing I'm gonna do before I completely seal this up is purge oxygen in it. So the lactic works better with a low oxygen environment. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pull this guy off of here and throw some CO2 in there, and then I'm gonna wrap it in saran wrap. This is what I've done for like every kettle sour I've ever done. So it's got a nice blanket in there. I'm just gonna throw that off, and then I'm gonna go grab some saran wrap. All right, so this is not like a foolproof system, but it does help, especially if you wrap it tightly. All right, so we're gonna let that sit. Hopefully a lot of our CO2 doesn't go away, and I will see y'all tomorrow. Okay, so it's been about 36 hours. This was not ready yesterday when I looked at it, but I think it should be now. We're going for like a 3.7, 3.6 pH. And I'm just gonna stick this right in here because we don't have to worry about contamination. Okay, so we're at a 3.5. That's okay. It might be a little tartar than I like, but I think the apricots will kind of make up for that. So I'm gonna turn my heat up to a boil, and then we're gonna boil it for 15 minutes and just let it cool in the kettle. We're doing a no-chill system just because I want to try it, and I thought, why not? I don't really care about this Berliner Weisse, so if the no-chill screws it up, who cares? Okay, so we're boiling now. I'm just gonna throw my hop thing in and measure 1/4 ounce of Azacca. And we'll just boil this for 15 minutes with the Azacca in it. Okay, so it's been 15 minutes of boil. I'm going to turn off my heat. I'm going to set an alarm to just go off when we hit like 80 degrees. If I can figure out how to do that. Okay, so I'm closing this up, and I'm just going to seal it with the cling wrap to keep any bugs out. Oh, you know, one thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start up my pump just to make sure it's all sanitized. So basically I'm just running the boiling water through to make sure that it's all good and we're not gonna get any bugs from the pump. And I'm gonna take off my insulation, obviously, because we don't want to insulate the heat. Okay, so this is now down to about 80 degrees. I'm just gonna go ahead and transfer this right into my sanitized kettle. Okay, so we got just about 5 gallons. So it's gonna give us ample room for our additions of our apricots. I'm gonna go grab some Safale 05 to just ferment this all down pretty cleanly, and then once it's all done fermenting, we're gonna puree some apricots. I think I'm actually going to use a Camden tablet to sterilize those. I'll get into that whole process when we actually do it, but let me go grab my yeast. So this is my Safale 05. It's cold right now, but this is 80 degrees. So by the time this all warms up in there and like gets acclimated, this will probably be down to around 70, which is great. I'm gonna go ahead and ferment this at 65 with my brew jacket thing and the glycol. There's the pitch. And what I'm really excited about is I drilled out one of these teeny stoppers so that I can use this thermowell in here. I think I'm actually gonna drop it to 63 degrees because this sits pretty far on the side, so it'll be cooler in general. So 63 degrees is what I'm gonna set this glycol to. And I'm just gonna make a blow-off tube. This is too small to fit a airlock. So I'm just gonna drop this in my other hole that I made here. I'm gonna throw my thermometer in my thermowell that I put in. And this guy will just live here with a rubber band. Alrighty, so I just got sanitizer in my blow-off. Fortunately, it will fit there nicely. I'm gonna set my brew jacket to be 63 degrees. Okay, so it's 78 now in there. So it should knock it down pretty quickly. So I will meet you guys back here in a few days. I'm hoping that this doesn't take very long to ferment out since it's only like 3% or so. You know what I didn't do is take my original gravity, but fortunately there's some beer still left in my lines. Okay, so we ended up a little high on this. We ended up with like exactly 5 gallons, but our bricks is looking like 10.3. So our original gravity is 1.043. We were hoping for 1.035. Oops. I guess we're gonna have a stronger Berliner Weisse. This will be more of an American version, I guess. I'll meet you guys back here when we do the apricots. So obviously I have no idea when apricots are in season. So when I went to my grocery store, there were no apricots there. Turns out nectarines are in season. So instead of an apricot, we are going to do a nectarine. So I'm just gonna pit these just for the easiness of when you're going to do this. I'm gonna weigh how many nectarines I have so that when you go to the grocery store, you can just use the produce scales or whatever. All right, so it looks like I have 6.5 pounds of nectarines, and I'll give you guys the pulp weight after because we're gonna food process them, and then we're going to use Camden tablets to sterilize them overnight. This is how wine is sterilized. So these need a lot of processing. A lot of times they're a little overripe, and I've got some iffy spots that I'm gonna cut out of these, and then I'll give you guys the final weigh. The one shitty thing about using nectarines is that the pits are much harder to get out than apricots, but they're beautiful. Like, we got a little mold I'm just gonna cut right around. I got these things for 99 cents a pound, so for a fruited beer, that is not bad. I always try to find, like, there's usually a cheap fruit provider, like, at least in every city I've lived in, and I've lived in some small towns, that you can get like super farm fresh in-season produce for way cheap. And I'm not talking farmers markets because farmers markets are usually pretty expensive, but they're just like the guys who get the not so desirable fruit. It may look weird. There's also this service called Imperfect Produce that you can try out, but you have less control kind of over that. I used to use them for a while. And these have also been sitting in my fridge for a while, like too long. So I'm just gonna weigh them in here because they gotta get blended. Okay, so altogether of actual usable nectarines, we got 4.25 pounds. So what I'm gonna do is they're gonna end up in this guy, but I'm gonna grab some Camden tablet. So you need 1 tablet per gallon. I'm just gonna put 1 tablet in this entire container. This is about half a gallon, but just to be safe. And you let it sit overnight so that the sulfites don't kill any of your yeast when you transfer it into the fermenter. And I'm just gonna blend it up with this. All right, where'd my lid go? So this is all gonna go into secondary, and basically all of the sugar in the beer has already been eaten by the yeast. This will add some more, so it'll ferment down again, get a little higher alcohol, and then we can drink it. That is gorgeous. Okay, so this is all sanitized. I'm hoping this fits in here. It looks like it will. And after we add the fruit in, I'm gonna let it sit for another week. And I'm gonna put the fruit actually in a bag so that it doesn't get everywhere. All right, so I'm gonna just mix this up so the Camden tablet gets all mushed together. All right, so I'm gonna close this up, stick it in my fridge overnight until around this time tomorrow, and then I'm gonna add it to my thing. So this is creating sulfur dioxide that will hopefully kill anything that's on these guys. We've got about a 1/4 gallon of nectarine puree, and I'm actually just gonna stick this in my kegerator. All right, so I'll see you guys here tomorrow when I add it to the fermenter. Okay, so it's time to add the nectarine puree. It's been sterilized using the Camden method, where I added like 1 tablet of Camden to this 1/4 gallon of nectarine puree. So I'm just gonna put it in a sanitized hop bag and toss it right in. And I'm doing it in this pitcher in case it got juicy. Gross. All right. Okay, so I'm just gonna seal that back up. So this will keep fermenting because we just added a bunch of sugar. So I'm not super concerned about the oxygen I just added because the yeast should scrub it out. Thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Channel memberships are now open. If you guys want to support the channel and get all the videos early, you can click the join button above. I want to thank our 2 newest members, Soppy86 and Skunky Brewster. Thanks so much for your support, guys. I will see you next time. And I'm just going to restart my pump.